Hello, everybody. My name is Christina, and I am from Mexico, and I currently live in the United States. And my original or mother language is both English and Spanish. Namaskaram mandi. Na peru Christina. Nenu Mexicananu. I mari English. English mari Spanish basha kuda matlarutano. It's better to see that people still take time when speaking. So English and Spanish I was born and raised with. I learned Japanese for a year, and then I spent a summer's worth of classes in Japan. But that was many years ago. And then I started learning Telugu, Hindi, and Arabic starting last year. I'm able to continue Arabic, and then Telugu and Hindi, I've had some trouble trying to continue it. I do want to get back into it, because that is a language that I wanted to really pursue. I just felt like I hit a brick wall in regards to finding a teacher that I can work well with. So that's been the biggest hang up, is finding somebody. I'm an archaeologist. I love history. I love cultures. And for me, I believe that learning the language of the cultures I'm interested in is my way of trying to show respect to that culture. I don't want to just go in and say, I want to work in your culture, I want to work on your buildings, when I haven't even taken that first step of trying to learn their language. So for me, learning languages is my way of giving homage to the places I would like to either study in or study about. So this may sound like very, very sad and very, very ignorant, but I was not familiar with how many languages were spoken in India. I had always just assumed, and that's due to ignorance, I never learned about it or took the effort to learn about it until a few years ago when I had seen a movie, and it had sounded different from the other Hindi movies that I had seen, and it was from Telangana. And I was like, okay. And so when I started to learn more about where this language was from, I learned a little bit more about the history and how it was basically a mix of people who came in from here and the people who came from here. And I was like, this is fascinating. I would love to know more about this specific area. So Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, and the history and the formation of it, I would love to continue to learn more about it. I think learning Telugu has broadened my mind to the different people. Where I live, there have always been communities of people from India, but now if I go to the store and if I listen to them, I can say, oh, this is Telugu, this is Hindi, this is Tamil. I can say, okay, I am not just stereotyping these people strictly by where they're from geographically. Now I can say, all right, there's more to them than just their skin color. And it has been able to, open my mind a little bit more, be more inclusive in how I see people and how I identify people. So it has been interesting in that regard. I think the best thing that has ever happened has been after learning Telugu for a few weeks, after watching something, whether it's a cartoon, a movie, or music, I started to recognize and to hear some of the words. Because when you're taught a language, it sounds very different from how the language is spoken. And so to catch it, to hear it, I was like, oh, it's happening, I'm learning. It doesn't happen that often because from my experience, Telugu speakers speak very fast. So you have to really hardcore focus to hear and to recognize it. So that was a really great experience that I had. Really nervous because you always speak slower, a lot slower when you're learning a language. And the other person gets excited. They're like, oh, you know my language. Wait a moment. Can you repeat that slowly? So there's that initial nerves, excitement. All right, let's slow it down so I can engage even more. Because once you see that you are able to engage with someone in their language, my hope is that it encourages you to try even more. You're like, yeah, I can do this. Maybe we need to slow it down, but I can do this. My goals, I always have to make them smaller because I always like to create these magical goals of in a year, I'll be able to communicate perfectly in the language, which is not realistic at all. and it sets you up for disappointment early on. So smaller goals, which are, can I read a sentence without having to resort to a dictionary? Can I listen to a whole sentence from a movie and understand what it's saying? So I try to set like little milestones, very small milestones, because then I see the progress. And once I hit one sentence, then it will be, can I understand 2 sentences in a row? So I'll try to build up from there, because those small achievements help me stay motivated. If I make too big of a leap, then if I can't reach it, I end up demotivating myself, which is very easy to do in language learning. I don't remember if it was from a comedian, but they were trying to joke about, how do you know if this person is your soulmate, like your true love? They say it's 3 words. All the people were like, oh, it's I love you. And he's like, no, I biryani nadi. It's like this biryani is ours. And I just thought that was really funny because I love food and I never share. So I related to that. So I was like, okay, I want to use that someday. So in 2019, I stayed in Hyderabad for a few months. Hyderabad is in Telangana. Funny, I went to Hyderabad before I started learning Telugu. I wanted to go there to see the archaeological sites, which I did. And it was very funny. I was like, okay, I got my Airbnb. They have a TV, so I'm just gonna always have the TV on so I can just be exposed to as much Telugu. I turn it on and I'm only getting Hindi channels. I'm like, what is this? The person who owned the Airbnb that I was a part of was a Hindi speaker. They only had Hindi channels on the TV service that they bought. And I was like, ugh. So that was interesting because I guess I assumed that if I were to go somewhere that I would mainly be exposed to the one language. When I was in Hyderabad, I was hearing Hindi, I was hearing Telugu, I was hearing different types of Telugu. There was like a street language. I don't know if it's street or just the hip version of Telugu, which is like Hyderabadi, which I think is like Hindi and Telugu together. So that really confused me. And I think I was hearing Tamil, Urdu. So what I had assumed would help me expose myself to the language didn't work out. Funny story is that I like to buy clothes from the places that I go to so that I can kind of blend in. When I would go to different sites, people would ask me if I'm from the north. What does that mean? There's this idea that people from the north are very light-skinned. And so because I was dressed a certain way, but light-skinned, they just assumed I was from the north, and people would try to speak to me in Hindi. And I was like, hi, nahi. Oh. So it was interesting. I would not have assumed or have thought that I would have been seen that way. When I was in Hyderabad, what I heard a lot of was pora, like go away, and Telugu. I don't know. When I went to start Telugu classes, that was all I knew, which is not, what have you learned by going to India? Pora! I will say this, if you do travel to India, really have somebody either there or who has been there to help you make the most optimal decisions. Because I went there with no help. I just did my own research. I went there. Now I teach online. I was teaching before the pandemic happened. And I was like, okay, from what I had researched, Hyderabad was supposed to be very techy, and people said, yeah, you can find internet everywhere. You can find it everywhere if you have a phone number, an Indian phone number, and the monsoons cut out the internet if the people had set it up poorly. So when I was over there, because I didn't know anybody, I couldn't ask for help. So I ended up having to leave because of my work. If I had reached out ahead of time and tried to make connections beforehand, then it might have allowed me to stay longer, which I would have preferred. So definitely recommendation, if you're going anywhere, reach out to people ahead of time, because then it will help you if anything happens, that you have people you can talk to. If you really like the Telugu film industry, where they film a lot of the movies and the TV shows is in Telangana. It's called Ramoji Film City. It's where they film a lot of movies. The movie Bahubali was filmed there, so they still have the sets. Let's see if I have a picture of the mascot. Oh, there it is. But it's the Film City Lion, and it's where they film a lot of the movies. So you'll actually see some actors there working. That's another thing that I never knew, because I guess we hear about Bollywood, and you don't realize that within India there's the Tamil-based movies, Kannada-based movies, Telugu, Malayalam, like they all have their own industries. It's insane. I think the Hindi ones tend to have more budget, and that's why they tend to be more like over the top and reach the Western audiences. But I'm happy that more of the other films are reaching the Western audiences more, because they are really good. In an Uber, you know, the people would try to engage in conversation. Oh, do you like movies, ma'am? It's like, yes, I love NTR movies. Oh, ma'am, NTR, sir. Oh, don't. And they would always be in a good mood. My favorite Telugu actor is Prabhas. People may know him from the most recent Saho, Bahubali. My favorite movie of his is Purnami. And then Telugu songs, I have a lot. Let me find my favorite one on my phone. Let's see. And it's funny because I have so many songs, but they're all from movies. I don't know if I have a song just from like a Telugu singer that was not in a movie. I don't know if that even exists. So. But it is from the movie Purnami, Bharata Veramuga. I also love pretty much any music from M.M. Kiravani. He does a lot of the music for the director Rajamouli's films, and I really like all of his music. There's one that's really fun, I think, Mirchi. It starts off really energetic. It's like, Mirchi, 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 latte curate, Mirchi, Mirchi. That one I'll sing loud and proud, even though I know I'm butchering all of the pronunciation. I think that is from the movie Darling with Prabhas in it. I like a lot of the songs from his movies. I think what was the tipping point for me is that the one person who was a teacher that I found was a math teacher teaching Telugu. And so he taught language as a math class, and it just did not work because it was new material every day. We didn't take time to practice it, to use it. Because in my work, we spend like 12 lessons on a single topic. And that includes one grammar structure, maybe 10 different vocab. And yet he was giving me 80 plus verbs to memorize each class. Eventually, I was crying after every class. And that was one of the reasons I had to stop, is because I saw that I was not happy and I did not feel good about it. So if I had known that there was a community to like help maybe reach out, maybe that would have helped me feel connected. I have tried to reach out. I think Italki has that community aspect where people can kind of reach out if you're learning their language. And there was another site that was meant to be like a language exchange, kind of like a pen pal, where you reach out to people. I have had problems specifically not with just Telugu, with the other languages as well, Hindi and Arabic, that the people who have reached out to want to communicate want 24/7 communication. And they are also interested in learning English. So you're trying to learn Telugu, but they're trying to learn English. And so I have not been able to find people who can help reach that balance where, okay, let's speak maybe 50% in Telugu, 50 in English. Unfortunately, I've not had very good luck in that. I'm sure if I looked harder, I could probably find communities of people who are like, who are chill, not looking for 24/7 communication, and who are willing to help out. And if they need help, we can find that balance easily. I would always mix these two up because they were so similar. I think it was box and money. Is it like dabbu? I want to say that it's very similar, and I would always get them mixed up. So then I would always, like, to cover up the fact that I messed up, I would always try to make like a funny phrase, including both words, to be like, oh, I'm talking about both boxes and money. The long and short vowels, it's really hard to hear. What is it? I think water is very similar to another word, because water can also be pani, but then work is also pani. So I think it's like pani, my work, and then pani is also water. So it's like, so you try to elongate, but then it sounds really weird and unnatural, and you're like, but I'm learning. It needs to be this way. I have looked at a lot of those apps and they are only good for teaching you vocab. And from what I have seen, the last teacher I had was part of the app Basha.io. They do teach in class, but it is only for a specific time. And so once they teach the material, they're done, which is kind of sad. But so when I talked to him, he said that most language apps for Telugu are actually done by Hindi speakers who have learned Telugu and who are trying to make a language app. So some of the pronunciations and transliterations, which are the Telugu word written using English letters, may not match what you learn in a class, and it can be really confusing. So I would take these apps, these learning language apps, with a grain of salt, especially the ones for these more obscure languages that you don't see as often on there. Number one, don't compare yourself to others. Just don't. Some people have a natural proclivity to learning languages and they absorb it like a sponge. Don't compare yourselves to them because you'll be discouraged. If you are only familiar with Romance languages, English, Spanish, French, learning languages from other families, it's gonna be a poof, very different. Don't be surprised and don't be discouraged if it takes longer to learn these languages than it would a Romance language. So I guess overall, the big tip is don't be discouraged. Learning a language that is outside the norm for you is going to take longer and it's going to take more effort and more exposure, and you will get there in time, but in time is the key point. Don't wait to start listening to Telugu until you have started speaking it or using it in conversation. Don't wait until then. Even if you don't understand it, start listening from the very beginning, because what you're doing is you're training your brain to identify the new phonetics and the new sounds, and that will make it easier to understand your teacher, to then pronounce things correctly, like the difference between the duh, and duh. Like, if you listen to it more, you will be able to identify it and use it more. That would be one of the biggest tips. For finding resources, be as open in reaching out as you can, because sometimes people will have kids' books, like what they give their pre-K or their kindergarten students. And so it's easily digestible material. There's lots of fun pictures and colors, and it would allow you to transition more easily into learning the language than some of these big C.P. Brown books, which are just dense reading materials. And if you are somebody who studies this language as a native speaker, get together with somebody from the other target language and work together to make a book. Because I have found materials from Telugu speakers, but then the same problems occur. There are things that they don't explain as fully. And that's why I think that connection needs to be made with somebody from the other target language. And then finding teachers, I guess just keep on looking and keep on trying, because hopefully eventually you'll end up finding the one that just works for you and everything's explained well. And so do as much searching and look through all the different sites, because you'll find when I started learning Telugu on Italki, there were only 2 teachers there, and they're, I guess, the community mentors as it is defined. And then when I look now, there's now 10 plus. So people are seeing that there's an interest. Now, I would love to see more professional teachers on Italki. That'd be great. I would love to see you guys there. So I think it is coming to fruition, but just it's very slowly. So my hope is that it will get there. If you are with a teacher, be very clear about your needs in the learning environment. If they need to slow down, if they need to repeat a concept, be very clear, because you're the one learning. And if it's one-on-one, then the teacher, should match and modify the material and the teaching method to suit your needs. Don't worry about being polite and then suffer because you're not learning the material as well as you could. It is okay to take a break. Sometimes, and we call this in the language learning, I want to say that when you've reached a wall and you just seem to not be learning, I think it's fossilization. It means that you haven't given your brain the time to digest the material that it has already learned. And so when you're trying to input more, your brain's like, nope, nope, nope. So give yourself a break. And then if you need, just listen to stuff with no intent to focus and try to understand it. Just listen to it. When I felt I reached a plateau, I took like 3 weeks off and I went back in, and it helped for a little bit because I was able to sort of catch up. My brain was able to kind of calm down and digest the material more. So it's okay to take a break, giving yourself a few weeks, maybe a month, and then getting back into it. And being honest with yourself and the teacher. If things aren't moving as well or as fast, and it is one-on-one, then say, hey, I don't think that this is working out as well. Maybe we can try things a little differently. And if you're in a class, I would say still talk with the teacher, because there may be things that you can do separately to help things at your own pace so that you don't feel discouraged by the work that the other students are doing. To see your little achievements, if you're able to just say hi to somebody using the language. And then over time, if you're able to ask how they are, if you're able to slowly introduce and apply more words, specifically speaking, I think that shows great progress. And I guess the last point is don't have an end goal. I know that sounds kind of strange, but if you're saying I have to be completely fluent, then once you see that you're not getting there as fast as you would like, then that goal seems to be getting further and further away. So set smaller goals, like just saying hello, just introducing myself. If I go to the supermarket and say I've learned reading and writing, can I read what this says? Can I read this shampoo? Like, see those little successes and focus on those rather than that beautiful end goal of being this amazing fluent speaker. If I'm watching a movie or something, and if I'm able to understand like a whole conversation, then I'm like, pat on the back. I have had a lot of luck with the children movies, like Balaganesh. I think it's on Prime Video, and it's also on YouTube, and it's dubbed in Telugu, but because it's for kids, they don't use fancy language. They use very simple grammar, and so you can understand a good portion of the film, and it makes you feel good. You're like, yeah, I understood that. And then you go to a fancy movie where they're like speaking really fast, and you're like, on YouTube. One of the things that I think Telugu speakers do very well are those short stories. They're the animated short stories, and they look very silly, but they come out with like one every day, and they use very slow, simple language. And I think that is a great resource to just put on in the background when you're doing other things, to listen to start recognizing sounds. In regards to like writing and reading material, you can try to look for their like school materials, which are hard to find if you don't know somebody personally. This is the most current language book that I have seen in Telugu that was made, and one of the contributors to this book is a teacher on italki. But this is one of the books where it was two people from India working together to create this book. And this is where I also said, working together with somebody who is from an English language speaking country would have made this even better. But this is the most modern and condensed material for Telugu that I have found. If there are other materials that people are able to find, that's awesome, because I think you can find C.P. Brown Academy stuff for free, but it's old, so just keep looking. The word for flower, I think, in some books is still old. Palu. I've tried looking online, but it is so hard to find things, one, in good quality, because a lot of them were so old, and two, to find it that it can be sent to here. Access to Telugu learning materials and Telugu teachers. From my experience, last year I went through 3 teachers, and I had some pros and cons with each. What the overall problem I saw is that all of the teaching materials for English language learners in Telugu are from like the 1900s. I think C.P. Brown Academy, their materials, and they are old. They're good, but they don't take into account how Telugu is spoken currently. And also, from the teachers that I've met, most of them did not have experience teaching non-Indian ethnic students. And so there were grammar points, there were pronunciations that they could not explain because they've never had to explain it before. There are things that people, even who speak other languages in India, they have a similar concept in their own language, so they don't need to explain it. But coming from somebody who has had no background in that language, in that culture, that has been a big language barrier. At least that is from my experience. And I hope that they would see how interested people are to learn their language so that we can start opening these barriers up more so that people feel encouraged to learn this language. I am also a teacher. I teach English as a second language, and one of the most crucial aspects of teaching a language is TPR, which is like sign language basically. Because I am teaching students only in English, not in their native language. So I have to use like my hands and my expressions to help convey the meaning. And I really wish that other teachers would do that too, but I know that it's not as common. But I would love to see like kurchi ishtam, chai ishtam, like using the hand signals to help convey the meaning. I think that would be great. I think that this is a great idea for a project. I think that there's probably a lot of demotivation that happens because students feel so alone in learning this language. And knowing that there's a community of people who are also learning and who are also kind of lost in the sea of learning a Dravidian language, I think that would help them feel more confident in continuing to pursue it. And if I had known about this type of a community, like when I had first started my pursuits, I would have encouraged myself more to try and continue to see if I could find that right teacher. And I think that would have made me feel a little bit better, because that was a big letdown after 3 teachers and none of them really sticking. I was just like, well, 3's the charm, right? So if I had known about like projects like this, where there are communities of people who probably have their own teachers who are probably fantastic, I think that would have probably made me feel better about continuing these pursuits. Thank you very much for initiating this. Bye.